Good morning. I'm coming to you with the movie a little bit late today, and the reason that it's late is because I wanted to finish up my project. I was that close that I wanted to finish it so that I could present it today. This is a project that I started back on, I think the first post that I made was on August 27th, and it was when I blued the receiver in the barrel, which is all I had was a barrel and a receiver. And my project was to build the gun around that barrel and the receiver. And here it is. This is the Enfield #5 Jungle Carbine. They call it the Jungle Carbine. This one was made in 1944. They were made from 1944 to 1947. They made about 250,000 of them. They were originally designed not for the well, they weren't originally given to people for jungle warfare. They were given to paratroopers because they were lighter and shorter than the #4s, which they had at the time. The #4s were 49 inches long. This is 40 inches long. They weighed about 9 pounds. These weigh about 7 pounds. So they were supposed to be easier to use. And also with the war was starting to turn from Europe over to Asia and fighting in the jungles, fighting the Japanese in the jungles. And the #4 was actually a pretty heavy rifle to be carting around and hard to maneuver in the jungle. So they thought this would be a good idea. Well, it was never used in World War II in the jungles. It was used in Europe, Northern Europe, up the Scandinavian way. There was a couple of battles where the paratroopers used the #5s, and the #5s were actually, hopefully, they thought that they might take the place of the #4. Troops didn't like them. They said they had problems with keeping a zero on them, and that does not mean Japanese Air Force zeros, but that the zero they had trouble keeping. So they did studies on them. They did a lot of studies on the guns and found out that there was really not many of them that had problems with the zeroing. It was more of a a thing that the perception, I guess. That's my opinion, that it was more of a perception. The I know one guy that has one of these and he uses it as a deer rifle, and he has no problems with the zero on the deer rifle. Like I said, this is my rifle here. It's the barrel is 18 and 3/4 inches long, which is down by 6 inches from the #4. Which was the reason I keep saying the #4 is because the #4 is what was actually being used during World War II by the British. So this was, like I said, was supposed to replace it. Um, the buttstock is not the brass buttstock that you see for butt plate that you see on the others. This one's rubber, and the reason that it's rubber is because anybody that's fired a carbine and they know that there's a lot more kick to a carbine. The shorter the barrel, the more of a kick there is, and they're using the same cartridge that the long barrels use. So yeah, there's a lot more. That other guy, I did get to fire his carbine, his jungle carbine once, and I will tell you that aside from being very loud, which carbines tend to be loud, it did offer quite a kick. So I'm looking forward to taking this out to the range and doing some shooting. Some of the ways that they kept the weight off of these things was, well, there's one right there. What they would do is they would cut edges off of things, and they would cut pieces out of things that weren't necessary, little bitty areas like this. And eventually they cut 2 pounds from the #4 to the #5, or just about 2 pounds, maybe not quite. Plus, they cut off, 6 inches of barrel, which helped a lot too. This is it's got a sight, it's got the battle sight, the Enfield battle sight, which is good for 300 yards. And then it's got the pop-up peephole sight, and this is up to 800 yards. So it works for that. You just turn the little crank, and the thing goes up and down for the 800 yards. It's bolt action. It's got a magazine for 10 rounds, which was more than many of the countries during the war had for their rifles. It so up here they had the sight protectors, which is typical for Enfield. They had the fancy sight protectors. This is the bayonet lug. I don't have a bayonet yet. And this is what the British called the flash hider. Now, when you have a shorter barrel, when the gases and stuff that come out of the barrel tend to spread out more, so you end up with this big cloud of hot gases and stuff. So what they did was they put this on there, and what that does is it funnels it out towards the end. My friend that has this said that if you shoot it at night, he says it'll shoot a flame out the end, which I'm going to have to try just to see if that's true or not. Those that have an Enfield jungle carbine already know whether that's true or not. So, but this is every piece of this thing I found somewhere and bought it and put it together, and I tried to make it as authentic as possible. And there's a couple of parts that aren't authentic. The flash hider is not the authentic Enfield flash hider. I couldn't find one an authentic one, so I bought one that is a reproduction. Underneath on the trigger guard, you can see that it's rounded. That's a number 4 trigger guard. But on my research and talking to people, the armorers during war and during conflict, when they would get a gun in that had been damaged or they needed to repair, they would take whatever they had and put it on there. So it was not uncommon to see, I heard, even a number 4 receiver with a number 5 barrel and a number 5 and opposite and so forth, and so I guess it is still authentic because that's the way that the rifles were. So I didn't mention, how did it become known as the jungle carbine? I mean, if it didn't fight in the jungle in World War II, what happened? Well, after World War II, there was a country of Malaysia decided that they wanted their independence, and like many after World War II, had decided that they wanted their independence from England. Well, England, like other times, decided that's not what they wanted. So they went and they fought in the jungles of Malaysia, and that's where this got the name jungle carbine, not from World War II. Like I said, I built this, and there's some safety issues that are important when you talk about building your own or building a gun from the ground up. And the number one is you got to buy parts that are for the gun. You can't buy parts that are close enough and you can, I guess they call them Bubba. I hate that term, but and make them work, because I mean this is serious stuff. I mean, I found out a few weeks ago how serious it is when you have something wrong with your gun and you fire it, and it could have been a lot worse, but it turned out that it did not. All I did was get singed hair and a burnt face, a little bit of a red face. So, and the other thing is you got to worry about, this is not the bolt that came with this gun. This is a bolt that I bought off of eBay from somebody who knows where it came from, or whether it's a decent bolt or not. One of the things you probably want to do is get it checked, get the whole thing checked anyway by a gunsmith prior to you going out there and shooting it, just to make sure that everything fits the way it's supposed to fit and the way things are supposed to be. I looked it up at the time that the 30-30 round has 50,000 psi when it goes off, and that's what makes it so that it builds up this pressure and it can shoot a projectile as far as it does, is because of all the pressure that's built up behind it. I believe that the 30-06 is somewhere in the 80,000 psi, which is a lot of pressure. And that's what happened to me. Was I was shooting a 30-06. It was a 03A3, and the chamber was wrong, or had been fouled by rust. I didn't know. It wasn't my gun. And what happened was, when I fired it, it didn't perform the way it was supposed to within the chamber, and all the hot gases and everything else, instead of going out the end, came out the back of the cartridge. So it blew the primer out, and all the gases came out. Um, Modern guns are fairly modern. I'm not sure what year they started doing it, but have a hole in the side of their receiver. And what that hole is for is if something happens like that, it'll vent the gases out the side instead of back into your face. What happened was, when it happened, I turned my head because it just reflexed, and it hit me broadside, which is better than hitting me straight on. Some of the older guns that you might have, like my Steer, here, this is my Steer carbine, it does not have one of those holes. So if something were to happen, the pressure would be built up inside, and it would be a lot more of a serious situation than. So that's why this headspace is so important. I know I did a whole thing on headspace, and people may have been bored by it, but my whole objective was to let you know that when you have an old gun, especially if you're not sure about that the bolt was the original bolt that was fitted to the gun, then you need to get it checked. And uh, I do that here. I have the tools to do that. And if there's ever any question, I certainly consult with my gunsmith, and we talk about it. And I'm not playing around it. I don't want to get hurt. And shooting old guns is all right. We're back. I don't know if the picture was like that in the movies, but it kept freezing on me. But anyway, yeah, you need to make sure that everything's good to go, because um, I took it lightly to a certain degree, and I do not take it lightly anymore. So what I have is, I have my jungle carbine. Okay, am I frozen? I have my jungle carbine. Okay, I'm back now. So I have my jungle carbine, and what I want to do is I want to check the headspace on it to make sure that when I fire the gun, that the uh, cartridge and the bolt are touching each other, that there's not any extra space for it to expand back instead of just out to the side. So I have my Enfield bolt as the bolt head that unscrews. Enfield bolts, to get the firing pin out, you have to use a special tool. I don't know if they had the special tools on the battlefield or not. I'm sure they did, or somebody did anyway. So the firing pin comes out. I've already taken the extractor out of the bolt head. And the reason for that is because the extractor can get caught up underneath this gauge. So you want to make sure that you take that off. And the firing pin, the reason I took it out, it's not because it's going to fire anything off. It's because of the cocking piece on the back would distract from you actually seeing what's going on with the rifle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bolt back in. Okay, and this is without anything in it. You can see how the play goes all the way down. Okay, now I'm going to put the gauge in. This is the gauge. The gauge goes in, and this sits on where the shoulder of the cartridge would be, so that it sticks up, because that's where they measure for headspace, is from the shoulder of the cartridge to the back of the cartridge. So this is actually the shoulder of the cartridge to the back of the cartridge, and then they add on to it to make a determination whether or not you actually have enough space, that you don't have too much space between the cartridge and the bolt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stick that inside, and I'm going to close my bolt. Oop, doesn't close. So what that means to me is that I have contact with my cartridge when I close the bolt, so that it'll be a safe shot. If it had been too much space between the cartridge and the bolt, then it would have closed just like it would have with nothing in it, and that's I've had that happen too, and then that becomes a problem. So, but anyway, so that works. So I'm good to go. The only thing I'm waiting on, I'd be out firing it right now, but is I have still that band that goes across the back of your um, the back of your wood here to help keep it from splitting when you shoot it when the pressure comes back. So it's coming from England, and it'll be here. They say on Wednesday, so Thursday I'll be out taking some shots just to see how it is. Um, but anyway, there's my jungle carbine. The project's done. It's time to relax for a little bit, not too long. Catch up on some work that I have to do for things here at the shop, and because once I start on a project, I kind of get uh, into the project, and other things tend to slide by. So, but anyway, so there's my project, and thanks for following me. It's been a great journey. It's been fun, and we'll follow the next project too. All right, thank you.